Next, what do you do in order to demonstrate your love to her? We've gone 3 things already. The 4th thing is that you date her. I call it dating. Here in America, we do that. We call that, in India, we called it quality time. Where you are, here in Liberia, I don't know what you call it. It's okay. It's setting aside specific time that you spend with your loved one, your wife, in order to just be with her, just to show her that you love her, just to hear her out. In other words, the times at night when you greet her, you're probably only going to talk maybe 5-10 minutes. If something's really, really bad, you may talk 30 minutes, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be hours. And so there's, you don't hear all the story, and there's really, there'll be a little distraction, the kids running in and out, whatever happens. And so those are good times, but this is a very specific time that you set aside, and it's several hours each week. In fact, probably my wife and I, for the last 35 years, we have tried to date or have this quality time every single week. Even when our kids were small, even when we would have a babysitter, or we would have, we'd drop them off by Grandma and Grandpa's house and whatever. We wanted to make sure that we had time just for us. And that sounds, many parents will go, well, that's selfish. What do I do with my kid? Oh, no. Your kids want to see you dating your wife. Your kids want to see you spending quality time with your wife, because that time that you spend when mommy and daddy go off, and then they come back 2 hours later and they're smiling and they're happy and they're holding each other and and they got that special little look. The kids go, Mommy and Daddy love each other. Yep. We don't have to worry about divorce in our family because Mommy and Daddy love each other. Yes. Exactly right. Don't think you're neglecting the kid. You're not. You are giving the best gift you could ever give to your kids. In fact, we're going to deal with that a little bit later on, with the impact of what this quality time with your wife has on all the people who surround you. So let's go into a little bit of the details of just exactly why this is one of the most important times you will have in your relationship all week long. And what you actually need to do. So gentlemen, I'm going to give you a list here. This is what you need to do. Don't just show up, on Friday night or Saturday night or whatever and go, hey, you ready? Ready for what? You did? No, you need to plan it ahead of time. Okay? It's not just, well, so what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? No. Gentlemen, you're the leader. Take charge, step forward. Now, it doesn't mean that your wife can't plan some of these times. Absolutely. You can trade off back and forth. That's fine. But gentlemen, you need to start off by planning these times together. I don't care whether it's going to cost any money or whether it's not going to cost any money at all. I've been on lots of dates or lots of spending quality time where it cost me absolutely nothing. We went on a hike. We had a little picnic. I prepared a little stuff ahead of time, and I took it with us. And we went and sat on a hill and just overlooked the town. I don't care what you do. Just make it something that you've thought about ahead of time, which means if your quality time starts at 5 p.m., 5 o'clock at night, you can't start thinking about it at 4:45. All right, so so in other words, you need to sit down sometime during the week, and just spend half hour, 45, maybe an hour, and just think through something that she would really enjoy doing, something the two of you would enjoy doing together. Think about where you're going to go, whether she's going to need an extra coat, if it's going to be a little cold. Think about whether you want to get something to eat. Think about where you're going to go. Just plan it out. Have it all set to, have it in your mind. And then you need to ask her. Call her up ahead of time. Call her and say, sweetheart, I'd like to take you to someplace special on Friday night. And I'd like to start about 5 o'clock at night. Would you be available? Now, most of the time, she's just going to say, wow, yeah, that'd be great. Or maybe she can't be, and so you plan it for Saturday night. That's fine. But just let her know that you have thought about it and you want to do something special with her. All right. So now, it comes to the date time, the date night. What do you do on the date? Well, the very first thing, and this is wherever you are in the world, turn off your phone. Don't even... I mean, you can take it with you. Maybe you can leave it on vibrate in case there's an emergency from the kids or an emergency. But in other words, there are very, very few emergencies that you'll want to interrupt your date for, and you certainly don't want to just take it for a conversation. Okay? So turn off your phones and set aside all the distractions. Then, when you're during this quality time, when you're spending time with your wife, I want you to treat her like a queen. Okay, I've mentioned this before, I watched my dad treat my mom like a queen for 57 years. Oh my goodness, I learned all the things and then I taught them to my son. And then and I taught my daughters that they need to expect this kind of treatment from the guys that they date and the guys that they go out with. And so, gentlemen, what are some things? And I understand that some of this is with the American culture. I understand that. But in every culture, there are things that you can do to make your wife feel special. So here are some of the things that I do. Okay? And I think that these are appropriate wherever you go. Okay, when we go out and we're going into into a restaurant, I always open the door and allow her to go first. Now I know that there's some cultures where the man always goes first and he just marches and the wife follows behind. And that's a time when and I've had it explained to me, I've had it explained that this is a way that the wife honors her husband. Well, on a date, when you're spending quality time, you want to honor your wife. So you open the door for her and allow her to go first. If you're driving in a car and you get to the place, you get out of your car. I've had to there were dates that I went on when we first began to my wife and I began to spend time before we were married, and I had to say, no, listen, you stay in the car. And so I would get out of my side, I'd walk around the back, and then I'd open the door for her. I would hold out my hand. She would take my hand, I make it strong, so she'd take my hand, and I would help her out of the car. Now, can my wife open her own doors? Can she get out of the car on her own? Absolutely! My wife is a strong, independent, incredible woman. But when I do these things, does she need them? No. But is it a way of me showing her love and respect and honor? Yes. So when we get to a restaurant, if we go to a restaurant, I don't care if it's just a inexpensive little place or a very fancy place. If she's going to sit down, I walk over and I hold the chair for her. She doesn't need it. But does it show it? Yeah, I won't keep repeating that. But does it show respect? Yes. She sits down, I help her slide in. Then I go around and I take my seat. There are other when we walk down the street. I walk next to the traffic side. She walks on this side. Why? Because I'm there to protect her in case anything happens on the street. When we're walking along, I offer my arm to her so that she can take my arm and to steady herself. Does she? No, it's just a way that I'm showing I love her. And so there are just a dozen different things that you can do. And if you don't want to do these things, do other things that show her that she is the most special woman in the world to you. She is your goal during this quality time should be that you're going to spoil her like a princess. You're going to make her feel like she is the only woman in the world to you, and she should be. All right. Now, what are a few other things that you do on the date? All right. You listen to her. Now I know in our seminars, this is repeated in 2 or 3 or 4 different sections, but it's so important to really listen. And I won't go through all the details right now that we already went through, what listening was all like with the leaning and the interest and all, but that's what you need to do during this quality time that you spend to her. And then at the end, or even perhaps over your meal, or maybe you found a spot that you overlook the city, spend some time in prayer together. Gentlemen, for years, I taught on prayer, both to people in churches and to pastors. Let me just tell you, I've found very few, and this includes pastors, very few Christian men who actually spend time in prayer with their wives. Well, in fact, I took surveys on this. Hundreds and hundreds of people I surveyed, and very few actually spent time, quality time in prayer with their wives. Why? Because many men don't, they're not consistent in their spiritual lives. Okay? In other words, they may go to church and they've got this great front, and they look like the pastor and the guy that's all, spiritually in tune and all the rest of the stuff. And then when they get at home, they're not the same type of person. So the result is their wives know who they are behind closed doors. Their wives know that they got a temper. They got they're mean to this or they're what. And so if they go to spend time in prayer with their wives look at them and go, dude, what are you doing? You're not like this. I mean, when we're no. So in other words, the prayer time is a way it's kind of a way that God has set up that makes sure that we are consistent in our lives. So in other words, whatever you are on the outside, whatever you are in your church, whatever you are when other people are looking, you need to be that exact same person behind closed door when only your wife or only your children can see you. That's why most men don't pray with their wives. So all I'm saying is, if you're, and some of you men will say, well, my wife is more spiritually, and I just don't even feel like I can measure up. Well, then it's time to start stepping up. It's time to start being the man of God that God has called you to be. And so initiate these times of praying with your wife. Pray for your children. Pray for your business. Pray for her business. Pray for your church. Pray for the ministry. Pray for God's blessing. It doesn't have to be a long prayer time, just a time of prayer. And I can just tell you, there are probably only 2 things that connect the souls of a husband and wife just at a ground level, and they connect them in a way that is just, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just at a deep, deep, passionate level. And the first one is when we make love. The first time is when you connect during the sexual time. But the second one is when you connect in prayer together. And you're able to pour out your heart to God with her next to you, or she's able to pour out her heart to God with you next to her. And you spend this time in prayer. Okay, fantastic. So make sure that you pray together. Now, I know that there are a lot of men that will tell me, look, quality time, that's like 2-3 hours. No, for my wife and I always look forward to spending 4 or 5 hours with her. So I'll have men tell me, I don't have time. I really don't have, the work is so busy. I got so many projects and people are calling me, and I got people at church and they want to talk to me and the kids are no, stop. This time that you spend with your wife, again, I'm going to repeat it, is one of the most important times you can ever spend. If you want to be more of that pastor that you were called to be, if you want to be more the father that you were supposed to be with your children, if you want to be more the neighbor that you're supposed to be in your neighborhood, then spend this quality time with your wife, because that's the impact. As I go through this, it's not just because there's a lot of men that say, oh, well, that quality time that I spend with my wife is just about my wife and I. No, No, it's not. I've already told you about the impact that it has on your children. All of a sudden, your children are relaxed because they know mommy and daddy will never get a divorce, because they see the love between mommy and daddy. But it goes so much farther than that. And I've seen this everywhere we go. Date nights impact not just your children, they impact your children's children. It impacts your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. Why? Because you're demonstrating a relationship to your children that they will begin to live out. And when they live it out, they will live it out with their partner that will impact their children. You're going to impact generations just by spending great, wonderful quality time with your wife. I mean, how much better can it get? And then you're going to impact your community. And you say, well, my community doesn't know if I'm dating my wife. Oh, yes, they do. Absolutely. When you're spending time, first of all, they'll see you out and about. Most live in small towns, a village, a few thousand people. They're going to see you're taking time to be just with your wife. But the community senses it in a completely different way. The community senses the connection, the bond, the closeness that you have with your wife. And whether that means you're walking around holding hands, or you've got your arm around her, or you're just close, and she's got that special look for you and you've got that special look for her, the community knows that you're in love. So, gentlemen, spend time, quality time with your wife. All right, the last one. And the last one is to romance her. Now, okay, I want to qualify this right up front. Most men, when they hear romance, they think sex. Okay, and so that's both true and not true. So romance includes sex, but romance isn't just sex. Understand, romance is everything that we've been talking about all these last sessions, all the time that I've spent so far, all the listening, the paying attention, the quality time that you spend, all of that is romance to your wife. All of that is something that goes into the heart of who she is. And romance is it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that happens every single day of the week. It flows all the way through everything. And if you will give your wife romance all week long, then she's going to be eager to love you back at the end of the week when not just at the end of the week. She's going to be eager to respect and love you, but it's going to especially show up because when it gets to the area of a sexual connection between the two of you and making love, the romance is what your wife needs in order to open the door to her emotions so that she wants to be with you. That's what romance does in a relationship. And so the smart man, the smart husband realizes, I am going to romance my wife 7 days a week, not just in preparation for, we're going to make love tonight, so I'm going to romance her during this day. No, it starts every single day. In the morning when you wake up, the evening when you come home, it's all about romance. So, what is romance? It's like we said, it's everything that we've already talked about. It's the I love you. It's the apologizing when you it's the praying together. It's the listening to her. It's all of this. And I can go through the results of romance, and they're going to be similar to the results of spending quality time. Your kids see it. Your kids see it behind closed doors. It's not just that you're holding mommy's hand. It's that your souls are knit together. And gentlemen, I can tell you something. If you want your sons and your daughters to have great marriages, this is something you have to do. They're not going to learn from what you say and what they hear you say. They're going to learn from watching what daddy does and what mommy does. They're going to watch from how you continue to do this all week long. It just is. It's going to, well, here's another thing that it does, gentlemen. It creates within your wife a loyalty. There is a bond that happens when you are in this place of harmony with your wife. And in fact, it goes to the next thing that I've got written down. There's a loyalty and a trust that occurs. I've traveled all over the world, and I've called my wife from China and India and Hong Kong and all these different places when I've been absolutely alone, she never ever in her mind has ever thought that in all that time that I was spending away from her, there was ever a thought of me doing something that would violate our marriage covenant. Why? Because all week long, all the time that I'm talking to her on the phone, I am demonstrating to her that she is the only woman in the world. I'm demonstrating that to her by romancing her every single day. Okay, and I'm getting all tang-tuggle. I'm sorry. I'm tripping over my words because this idea of romance is so foreign to most men. They just don't. It doesn't click into them that they don't come home and they're in the business mode and then bad things have happen to work and all the right. And they just. Is there a time and place to express your emotions? Sure there is. Sure there is. But if all the time that you connect with your wife, you're this businessman or you're this guy, this a church guy getting stuff, no, you've missed it. Romance is something that happens all the time. And the next thing, one of the next really incredible results of this romance, and I've mentioned it just partially, and that is the passion that develops between the two of you. And gentlemen, if you have not romanced your wife for years, in other words, you've been in this relationship for 5 or 10 or 15 years and you just, it's my wife again. Well then, when you start romancing her, don't count on the fact that she's going to respond right away because you may get the smiles and you may get the look of, wow, what's he doing? You just keep it up. Because until she understands that you're going to continue doing this on a regular basis, she's going to be wondering, what in the world? What does he want from me? No, you just keep it up. All right. So gentlemen, that's what you do. That's the last step. The romancing her is what you do in order to demonstrate that she is the most incredible woman in the world to you. Those are the things that you do. So now, if I can kind of summarize up what we've gone through, it would be, first of all, to train your own mind by continuing to go back over 1 Corinthians chapter 13 on a regular basis to understand, to live out what love actually is. In each one of those things, love is patient, love is kind, so Vance is patient, okay, that's the first thing. Second of all, share your heart. Be open. Let her see what's happening on the inside of you. Third, apologize often. I apologize. I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but it's just... In fact, we're going to talk more about this later when my wife and I talk. But this apology, this apologizing is so vitally important for both husband and wife. But gentlemen, you need to take the lead. And then tell her on a regular basis how much you love her. Spend quality time with her, listen to her, and then romance her. All right, now, there's been some questions coming in, and I want to be able to go through these because some of these, I'm telling you, these questions are so good, and they're just... These are really, really foundational questions, and they've been coming in the chat box. And so let's walk through each one of them here, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Okay, this is where it really happens. So The first question here is, what happens if the pastor loves the church more than he loves his wife? Oh man, have I heard that one before. You know, so gentlemen, I'm talking right to you. Ladies, if you're a pastor, I'm talking to you too. What happens if a pastor loves, but I'm specifically talking to gentlemen right now, loves his wife more than he loves his wife, or even perhaps his children? Why? Why do we do that? It's because we get this, we get affirmation. We get attention. We get to be the spotlight. We get to be up front. We get all this stuff that comes in, and we like being the pastor. Yes. And that's wonderful. Except for the fact that if you don't control that, it will destroy your marriage and your children. I can't tell you how many children I have run into that go, won't have anything to do with the church anymore. Why? Your dad was a pastor. Yeah, I know. He spent all his time down at the church ministering to other people, and he forgot all about us. Oh, how sad. Oh, do we really Okay, so gentlemen, do not make that mistake. And the question was really about, does he care more about the church than his wife? This is a pastor, if that's the case, this is a pastor who has not understood the foundational fundamentals of ministry. And we went through it in the very first session. And that's a pastor that needs to read Titus chapter 1, verse 6. He needs to understand that before you can actually have an effective ministry, you've got to have a relationship with God that's dynamic. You've got to have a wonderful relationship with your wife, and your kids have got to be in order. They've got to love the Lord. Those three have to be in order. Then you can have a ministry. And if a man goes into ministry living that out and forgets that, somebody needs to sit down and remind him, sweetheart, the church comes after your relationship with God, marriage, and children. All right, next. What happens when a pastor spends more time with the church than with his wife? Okay, all right. So there's a balance here in this question, because it's similar to the question that was just asked. So I want to balance this out a little bit. First of all, there are times when a pastor will spend more time at the church than with his wife or his children. Those are emergency times. Those are maybe somebody is threatening to commit suicide. Maybe there's a big event at the church, whatever it happens to be. Okay, that's fine. Periodically, that happens. But pastors, if that's happening all the time in your schedule, then it's become imbalanced. In other words, you've got to be a man that is focused in. You've got to be focused in on the fact that you need to control the amount of hours that the church gets from you so that you still have time with your wife and children. Now, let's go to the other side. There are some wives who want their husbands to always be available to them. And wives, if you're in that case, you need to grow up and realize that this man has a calling from God. And there are times when he is going to need to spend time with those people who desperately need him. Like I said, these extremes should be the exception. In other words, too much time with the church, too much time with the family. There needs to be the balance so that a pastor can be the person he's supposed to be without neglecting his wife and his children. All right, next question. Is it right to say, I just love you? Well, yeah, I'm not quite sure exactly what the question really is saying. But is it okay to just say, I just love you? Or I love you? Sure. That's just a simple statement of the fact that you love, that you care. Absolutely. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be involved. Absolutely. I love you. I say it all the time to my wife. Okay, question number 4. Can you marry a woman who is older than you? Good question. Excellent question. And here's how I would answer it. You need to go to the rule book. This is the rule book. This is the Word of God. And if God has said something in here, we live by it. If God has not said anything about it in here, then we have freedom in it. Now, I know there's cultures that will say, oh no, you can't do that. You can't. Well, when a culture comes to me and says, you can or cannot do that, I go to God's Word and I read it and I find, so God's Word says nothing about marrying an older woman or younger woman. It doesn't say anything about that. And so in that circumstance, you have you get to stand on God's Word and have the freedom that God's Word has given you. And if the culture doesn't like it, then the culture needs to change. Yes, it's okay to marry an older woman because God says nothing about that. All right, next. What if after marriage, the lady finds out that the man is impotent? Very good, and especially meaningful in Africa. As I was talking with some dear friends, they were explaining to me and it's different here in America, but they were explaining the absolute importance of having children within a marriage. And if I understand correctly, that oftentimes marriages are not viewed as real, are not viewed as complete until there are children. And then the marriage is viewed as complete. Again, I would take you to the Word of God. All right? All throughout Scripture, there are couples who lived for years, decades. Take Abraham and Sarah. When did they have their first child? They didn't have their first child until Abraham was like 100 years old. Okay, so they lived all that time. Was the marriage real? Absolutely. Was it considered real by God? Absolutely. Was not having children an excuse for divorce? No way. Not a chance. That is never something that God gives us the freedom to do. And so I would say that if you discover, and this goes for both men discovering that their wife cannot bear children, that happened also in the New Testament. We read stories like that. Or if the wife discovers that her husband is impotent and cannot produce a child, I would tell you, first of all, that is not any reason at all for divorce. Second of all, I would say that if you will recognize that God has His hand in your life and that you can use this opportunity to be not only a blessing, but you can see God work in a way that you never even imagined possible. So here's what happened in our lives. My first two kids, like you saw the picture. You saw the picture of my wife and my three children. And my third one, obviously, is adopted from China. I'm just telling you, that little girl is the most incredible blessing in our lives that we could never have imagined how she would bless our lives. We had people come up, oh, it must be it's so wonderful what you did for that child. Oh, you've just blessed her life. And we look at her, we look at the people that say that and we say, oh no, you don't understand. She's been far more of a blessing to us than we ever could be to her. Oh, and then people say, well, you must love your two biological children more than you love your adopted child. No, not from the very first day that we got this little girl. Those three kids, I would die for any one of them in a heartbeat, just like that. It doesn't even cross my mind that this little girl is not from my body. This is a gift from God. God has given me the opportunity to make a difference in her life and she to make a difference in mine. And so all I can say is, if you discover your wife cannot bear children, or husbands, or wives, that your husband cannot produce a child, then go to your knees in prayer together and say, all right, Lord, where can we make a difference in another child's life? You can walk right outside the church doors, right outside the place where you're listening right now. You can go out in the streets and you can find, like little children, bigger children, hundreds, maybe thousands of children that need somebody to love them and raise them and to know the Savior. So if God has given you this opportunity, don't think that it just happened by accident. God chose you. Step into it. Go adopt. Make a difference in their life and let them make a difference in your life and become the man of God and the woman of God that He called you to be. All right, next question. It's more of a, it's more of a statement. It says, words are powerful, especially affectionate words. Oh, wow. You have no idea. Yes, absolutely true. Positive, loving, affectionate words, they change the atmosphere. They change the thoughts, not only in the mind of the person to whom you're speaking, but in your own mind. When you say, I love you, when you say you're beautiful, when you say, I care for you, when you say you are a wonderful husband, when you say, then your mind begins to believe those things. You begin to act in a different way, and the person to whom you're talking begins to act in a different way. Yes, you create this incredible, we'll mention it over and over again, spiral up when you use positive, affectionate, loving words. Okay, next. Why is it so hard for a woman to apologize? Okay. Obviously, a man wrote this, and I would make a correction with that. I would say that it's not hard for a woman to apologize. It's hard for certain personalities to apologize. Okay, and we're going to get into a little bit more of this later, but tomorrow, as a matter of fact, in another session. But here's what happens. Very strong, very leadership type of personalities often have a struggle with admitting that they're wrong. They just do. And it stems from, first of all, an insecurity. And then second of all, it stems from these four things. And I'm going to mention these today, and then we're going to go into them more in depth later on, because I struggled with this. I mean, this was really a major issue, and I had to go through a major life change, realizing that I struggled with these four things and realizing that they were creating havoc in my life, my marriage, my relationships and everything like that, because I couldn't admit I was wrong. I couldn't apologize. I couldn't, okay, so I wanted to look good. I wanted to be right. I wanted to be in control, and I wanted to avoid pain. Now, if you look at apologizing, it doesn't make you look good. Okay, not on the surface. It shows that you weren't right. You have to admit that you were wrong. It does avoid some, you're no longer in control because you've had to humble yourself. And then fourthly, it can be painful to admit you're, okay, so those four things, just remember those, because we're going to go in more in depth tomorrow. But if you struggle with apologizing, all I can say is these things need to change in order to be a man or woman of God. All right, next. If you apologize and your husband or wife will not accept the apology, what do you do? Oh, boy, that's good. That's, in fact, I'm not even going to answer it. And the reason is because my wife and I are going to talk about that in an upcoming session. We're going to address, the question is superb, and it's really, really important, but we're going to deal with that in depth. So just hold on. We will answer that question. Next question. What happens to the marriage if one partner likes romance and the other does not? Oh, okay. Okay, very, very good. So I'm gonna address the question from two different angles. First of all, I don't think that the question, whoever was asking the question, I don't think that they were asking about actual romance. The romance, as I've described it, where it's apologies and loving words and greeting people and listening and everything, I don't think there's any partner in any marriage that would ever say, oh, I don't like any of that stuff. Okay, to me, that's why you get married, to have all those wonderful things that occur. So I think what they're asking is, what happens if one partner does not like sex like sex, and the other one does not want it. Okay, very, very real question. And in fact, we have a whole nother session that deals with the importance of the sexual relationship within the marriage between the husband and wife. The lack of sexual desire occurs in many, many marriages. Usually, there are about twice as many wives believe that they don't want sex anymore as husbands, but it still occurs, like I said, in many, many marriages. And it often occurs because the husband doesn't understand the importance of romancing and loving his wife all week long. And so the result is she just, doesn't want anything to do with it. Either that or the wife doesn't understand just how important the sexual relationship is to the strength and the foundation of the marriage. And so we will deal with that in depth. It's something I've heard in a number of conversations, either on the phone or in person, where, the husband will look at me and say, my wife she just doesn't want to make love anymore. And she just doesn't understand how important that is to our relationship. And it's true. It's true. So another session we'll answer the question because it's foundational to all marriages. The issue of sex is foundational. It's like eating, drinking, it's like talking, it's like all the rest of it. So, all right. Next question. Have you told your wife that you love her as Christ loved the church? Great challenge. Thank you so much. You know what? In 35 years of marriage, I didn't start our marriage out like that because I didn't even know the phrase in the beginning. I just knew from how my dad lived it out that I needed to be living out a type of relationship with my wife that demonstrated a real love. But as I grew in this and I began to teach this, I realized there's a phrase that describes how I was already living this in our marriage, and that is, I was loving my wife as Christ loved the church. Now, do I do it right all the time? No way. Oh my goodness, I've gone through so many. That's why I say apology is an important thing, and the only reason I tell you that is because I've had to apologize so many times myself. Okay, but do I try to love my wife as Christ loves the church? Without question. Does she know that now? Absolutely. Next question. How can a woman make her husband understand that she truly loves him? Excellent. Because we've spent these first 2 or 3 sessions all about the man and what he does. So the next session, my wife will be teaching, and she's going to answer that exact question. Okay? So I won't go into it right now. Next question. If your wife is cheating on you, should you still continue to love her? Okay. Very, very good question. So let me clarify. First of all, this could be for both husband and wives. Obviously, cheating this is not something that a man of God or a woman of God does. Bible makes it very clear you to be an elder is to be the husband of one wife. The wife is that's what marriage is about. It's a man and a woman. That's it. I don't know. That's what God says. If the culture disagrees, culture's wrong. All right. But let me clarify something. The question is, what happens if, a wife or a husband, a wife is cheating or if a husband is cheating? And so I want to say that, first of all, this is not something that you suspect. This is something that you know. This is something that there is proof. In other words, this can't be just the idea of a jealous mind. This is something that either your partner has admitted to or something that there is proof of. Okay, so now if that's the case, and you know for absolute certain that your husband or your wife is cheating on you, then you have 2 options. If if we go by, again, by God's book, you have two options. First of all, it says that when Christ talks about marriage, he said there is an exception to the marriage bond, and that is if one of the marriage, one of the people within a marriage breaks that bond with adultery, in other words, cheating or sex outside of marriage, then the other partner is free to leave that marriage and get married to somebody else if they wish. Okay. But you also have a second option. Now, this is not really an option. If your husband or wife is just cheating openly, doesn't care what you think, doesn't care about the family, and has just gone on, okay, then the marriage is over. It's time to change. It's time to find a godly man or a godly woman. But if that marriage partner has come back to you and said, "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake, and please forget." And they're willing to admit to the mistake and the sin and own up to it and confess and go into counseling. Then you have an option. You have an option. You don't have to get a divorce. You can work hard to reestablish that marriage. Maybe you're doing it for the kids, maybe you're doing it for you, maybe you're doing it for your community. I don't know. But this is a decision that you need to make after you spent time in prayer with the Savior, you spent time talking to wise counsel, and your husband or your wife has agreed that they're going to reestablish trust in the relationship. And that's going to take some time. It's going to be hard work. But if you choose to do that, you have the rights to do that. All right, so next. If you apologize to your wife, even if she is wrong, won't it give her permission to go on doing wrong? Very good, very good. So let me clarify. Okay, first of all, if the wife has done something that's just wrong, done it with the children or with a neighbor or outside or said something cruel and does she need to apologize? Yes, she does. Did you have any part in what she did with the kids? No. So that's not the time for you to apologize. When I was talking about making sure that you apologize to each other and you both take responsibility, I was talking about when you've had an argument or you've had a fight and you both said things and done things in that and you both strained the relationship. That's when you need to step up and you need to apologize. You need to lead the way. But if your wife has done something independently of you, no, then it's her responsibility to apologize. Yes. Yeah. Lots of people. So I wanted to say also that lots of people, if the husband or the wife won't apologize, then lots of people want to try to figure out a way to make them apologize. Well, you can't make somebody else do anything not sincerely. They can mouth the words, "I'm sorry," but it won't mean anything. You've seen your children do this. So you can't make them do anything. If that person won't apologize, then it's time to go into prayer. It's time to seek the Lord, to ask the Lord to intervene, to change that person's heart so they understand how vitally important apology is in relationship and in family. All right, next question. What if my wife is not good at responding to calls during the day? How can I show her that I love her? Oh, that's good. If I understand correctly, this is a husband who would like to call his wife during the day and tell her that he loves her, but she doesn't pick up the phone. Okay, first of all, you need to find out if she's not picking up the phone because she's like in a business meeting, or maybe she's got the phone on silent, and if that's the case, then not a problem. If she's not picking up the phone because she doesn't want to talk to you, that's a whole different conversation. Then you need to find out why she doesn't want to talk to you. But if she's just not picking up the phone because she can't get to it, or she's busy, or whatever, that's fine. Just tell her that you love her in the morning when you leave. Tell her you love her at night when you get home, and that's fine. It shouldn't be a problem in the relationship. Next question. What role does sex play in a godly marriage? Wow. So we touched on it just a little bit. I'll just say that it plays a huge role. It is the connection of souls. It's the gift that God gave us in order to bond us together, and it's the reason why 1 Corinthians says that really there's only one reason why a husband and wife should not be regularly engaged in having in making love or having sex, and that's the only time is when one of the partners wants to have a time of prayer and fasting. Now, does sex have to stop? No, but if one partner says, I want to spend the next week just concentrating on the Lord and just in prayer and in fasting, then fine, you can take a break from the sexual relationship. But 1 Corinthians makes it very clear that when you're done with that time, make sure that you come back together again so that neither one of you is tempted to go outside the marriage. So does sex play? Oh, it is huge. It should be foundational to what we talk about in the church, and it should be a regular part of our conversation. We don't do it. As a matter of fact, I have a whole nother session on this, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time answering the question now. You just need to make sure that you listen to that session, because that session will really answer the foundation of where this question is going. All right. Can I be a strong, faithful pastor if I'm not married? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The Apostle Paul, I mean, in his words, remember what he said? He said, I wish all of you could be like I am, single. Because what happens when you're single? Well, you got a whole lot more time to spend with your church members, with people on, in evangelization, you got a lot more time because a wife and children take a lot of time. But it's also being not married is a gifting from the Lord, and so if you have that gifting and you're not tempted to be having sexual relationships, before or outside of a marriage relationship, then I'd say absolutely do what Paul did and commit your entire life to being that faithful pastor. Sure, you bet. I think this is our last question here. What can I do if my mother always criticizes my wife and even advises me to quit the marriage? Oh boy. Okay, so this happens all the time. Interfering. So let's deal first of all with the interfering mother or father in the relationship. Okay, let's approach it from that angle. So mother and fathers, and I know this differs within each one of the cultures that I deal with, but in here it says when we get married, we are to leave our mother and father, and we are to, the word is cleave, or to join with our wife or our husband. In other words, when we are in our mother and father's house, they have authority over us. That's true. When we leave and we become married, we form our own households, and our mother and father no longer have authority over us. We have authority over our own households. Now, there are a lot of, and I understand how radical that was in biblical times. The Bible, when it said that, it broke all cultural rules, because they would have a grandfather and then a father and then a son, and then, all these generations that would exist either in the same household or in households that were right next to each other, and the grandfather ruled everything. When the Bible said that you were to leave and you were to join with and you were to start, it broke all cultural rules. So I'm just saying that the Bible says that you are to have authority, you are to have the strength, you are to have the say-so in your own home. And so on the mother and father side, if you are a meddling mother and father, in other words, if you're coming and expecting your son or your daughter to do what you want them to do, stop it. That is absolutely wrong. You can suggest if they ask your advice. You can pray. You can pray all you want with each other, but you should be allowing them to form their own family unit. Now, like I said, if they come to you and ask your advice, you can give the advice, but it shouldn't be detrimental to that marriage relationship. And so now let's deal with, that's dealing with the in-laws, or the mother and father, or the mother-in-law and the father-in-law. Okay, that deals with them. Okay, they should not be having an interfering role in the relationship. But if they are having that interfering relationship, then the question is from a man, then men, you need to step up and be the man of God that God has called you to be. You need to step up and realize that you have formed your own house. And if your mother, I'm speaking directly to the man that asked the question, if your mother is coming in and criticizing your wife, telling you that maybe you ought to go quit the marriage and go find somebody else, then you need to pull her aside. Don't do it in front of everybody else. You need to talk respectfully and lovingly. At least this, especially in the beginning, you need to talk respectfully and lovingly and say, Mom, this woman is my wife. I have committed to her before God that I would love her for the rest of my life. And I have chosen this woman, and I would appreciate it if you would not say negative things about her. Thank you, Mom. Now, your mom will probably go, oh, why are you talking to me like that? Why? Okay, it doesn't matter. If she responds like that, she can respond like that all she wants. You need to be the man that God has called you to be. You need to be the man that has his own household. Your mom doesn't rule the household anymore. And if she's saying negative things about your wife all the time, no, not right, not good. All right. So if she doesn't take the hint or doesn't take what you've asked and step away, and she continues to meddle in your marriage, now it's time to step up and say, no, Mom, I told you what I needed to have you do. I told you how I wanted you to respect my wife as I love her. And so from now on, if you continue to be this way, you will no longer be allowed in our house. Oh, I know there's some of you that are thinking, oh my goodness, that just can't happen. That just can't happen. But if your mother is ruining your marriage relationship, you need to preserve this first, because this will impact everything else that you do. It impacts your ministry, it impacts your community, it impacts your children. And so if that relationship is toxic, you need to block it until your mother understands, I need to be loving, supportive, praying, and a mother, a woman of God that God has called me to be. All right. So let's see. Okay, I think that was the last question. Thank you so much. That was session 3. We are done for the first day. Thank you so much for being with me. Have a blessed and a wonderful day.